says off air. There we go. Live.
You're right. Everybody's chomping at the bit. We're excited to be here at the Open Educational Conference in Richmond, Virginia as a VConnecting session with Laura Gogia and Lee Bassette, who is here to tell us a little bit about their experience. And we also have a lot of our friends virtually connecting who have questions about what's been going on and what you've been learning, how people are responding, what kinds of conversations are happening. So welcome. Why don't we start with the on-site folks to do a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm Chuck.
I'm Ken.
I'm Lee.
I'm Laura.
I'm Rebecca.
But you said quick. Okay.
Let's go.
Let's go. All right, I'm Susan Adams. I'm coming at you from Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. And let's move on to Wendy.
Hi everyone, Wendy Tullio coming from Central Australia. I'm an instructional learning tech, instruction, education, whatever.
And I see you on Twitter. I think this is the first time we've met, so hello.
Great, and Maha.
Okay, for me it's good afternoon, but good morning to you all. Maha from Cairo, Egypt. I'm in the learning and development field.
Great, and Lorna. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Lorna Campbell. I'm dialing in from Glasgow in Scotland, and I work at the University of Edinburgh as OER liaison.
Great, and George.
Hi, I'm George Station. I teach first year seminar at Cal State Monterey Bay on California's Central Coast.
Great,
and the
welcome, good to see you,
Hi,
George.
George. This is the George Station fan club over here.
We love George.
We love all of you. But
Actually, I know.
like
Actually,
you.
we love everybody. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited right now. Okay, sorry.
Hey, and next up, Donna.
Hey, I'm Donna Lonclos. I'm an anthropologist and I study academics and tell them to rethink their life choices. I'm so excited to see all you guys in a room. This is amazing.
I want to hug the computer right now.
Oh, what fun. And last but not least, Michael.
Good morning. I'm Michael Berman. I'm a few hours south of George, and I'm struggling to send out tweets with the right URL, which is really hard for me because I've just started drinking coffee this morning.
Awesome. Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Well, thanks for taking that task on, Michael. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. All right. So without further ado, how are you? How are you guys down there? What's been going on for you?
You start.
It's all about you guys.
I know.
We're just going to fade into the back.
You know, just yesterday was fantastic. It was, the keynote was really, from Gardner Campbell, was really inspiring, and then there were some great, you know, some great panels, but really what was wonderful about yesterday was just, we're getting a selfie. We can't take a selfie.
Keep going.
This is fine. Basically what was great was just being able to see so many people. I keep saying that this conference couldn't come at a better time because it's helped me regain my sanity. Because it's that time of the semester where the day-to-day stuff and those day-to-day challenges can start wearing you down and start making you wonder, like, what am I even doing here? And then to come to a conference like this and a place like this where so many and so much of it is, you know, people who are all working, going in the same direction and holding the same values, and it sort of really reminds you and energizes for, you know, what it is we're doing and why it is that we're doing it. So I've just been, and you know, it's just like all the hugs, so many hugs, and it's just been fabulous. So it more than anything, I don't, in terms of I don't know if you'd call it learning, but certainly been inspired by this whole thing and just meeting everyone. And Clint is here. And so that's what's been going on. I'm presenting tomorrow with my colleague, Mary Washington, Zach Whalen, on a degree of levels and degree of openness with the ethical implications, kind of particularly of asking our students to do out in the open. And what does that mean? How did we handle those kinds of challenges? So that's my presentation, my talk that I'm doing tomorrow.
I see Clint jumped in.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Hi, guys.
this,
That's what you look like. You're about a 5-year-old child.
I'm a little older than my avatar is.
Yeah. Hi, Clint. It's Lori.
Hey, Lori. How are you?
so this,
You're welcome. Yeah.
this conference has been really interesting for me because I no longer, I work in a kind of a para-academic field right now. I'm working for the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia, which means that I am here at this conference like on my own time while also working. And so I'm not in many sessions because I'm out there trying to do my day job at the same time that I'm meeting with all of you guys too. And so this has created a very interesting kind of open space. Kind of goes back to what open education is about, what living in digital spaces is about, is this idea of the fluency between different roles and how you can be in different places and doing different things at the same time. And so I'll be honest with you, I didn't even think about this before walking into a VC session. I can't really tell you what's in the sessions because I'm not in the sessions. I am in the hallway trying to do my work while also being surrounded by all these beautiful people and so many hugs and so much just sitting there listening to people have these philosophical conversations kind of wash over me while I'm doing essentially some creative work too. And it's just a very rich experience, but it's different from your typical conference experience, I think.
And she led the taco run last night, or taco.
Yes, we did a taco crawl last night.
Don't leave me hanging. Don't leave me hanging. There we go.
Yeah, so the taco crawl was amazing, and I wish you guys could have some tacos and beer. If I could give you tacos and beer right now, I would.
But what this allows, that some yokel coming up from a small private college in Tennessee who really doesn't have any station with all of these things, no pun intended, George, and just walks in alongside these guys who I feel like kind of know what they're doing. And I'm welcomed into that, and they have place in that. And like you said, it's the washing over of all of these things together that just allow me to feel more empowered going back to my place and doing my thing. It's very valuable to be here and to be here with these guys. These guys are the best. Love you, Laura.
Yeah.
Oh, you're the best.
Okay, now we're to 11.
All right, so what are we doing now? What are we talking about?
I'm happy to open up to virtuals. I do have a question too about empowerment, but want to give a chance for anybody virtual to ask questions.
I want to ask about that thing that you just said about these guys really know what they're doing. I would like for you in the room to speak to the extent to which you actually feel like you know what you're doing.
Donna, if you haven't figured it out yet, part of the reason I insist that I tell these guys what they know what they're doing is because we have these conversations all the time, and we all know how little we feel like we know what we're doing.
That's right. So let's discuss, right? We don't feel like we know what we're doing. That is objectively not true, and we do stuff anyway. So
yeah.
We do stuff anyway.
So
I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
That it's a confidence thing, right? And it came up in it's Amy Slay said it, right? Instructional designers need to remember that we actually we need to go about our work with that sense of confidence. We do have something to contribute to the conversation instead of feeling like we know what we're talking about.
And I say we don't know what we're talking about for me, and I say these guys know what they're talking about. It's a little bit serious because really in so many ways we do have this knowledge. We are capable of sharing this with one another. But so much of what does provide that empowerment is the knowledge that we have these people around us and they are going to welcome us in. Lee and I were having a conversation last night that that this particular academic community, more than any other, you can make the statement, I want to give people access to knowledge. I want to provide support to people. And by making that statement, you're welcomed in. and you can do. Hi, Maha. Good to see you.
Hello.
Mahabeli?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm in an interesting, I already said I was in an interesting space in this conference, but it gets even more interesting because, you know, I can't do anything simply. And I'm doing two.
Why we love you.
I'm doing 2 different panel presentations at this conference, and in both of them, I am telling my story. As soon as I'm done with this session, I'm going into a session, and I'm literally telling a story that happened while I was still practicing as a physician. It is my story. I am the expert of my own story, and it's so funny because I still feel that, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's like, wait a minute, no, it is my story. I own this story. And so I'm having to own that. And then in my second panel, it's about open dissertations and about the process I went through during my dissertation process. So really, everything I'm speaking about is from a very personal place. And so I am taking this opportunity to say, yes, this is my story. I have something to say. For me, it's really more a matter of, does anyone actually want to hear what I have to say?
I do.
So
I may
that's
actually attend a session. I mean,
I-
I might show up.
So we'll see how it plays out.
We turned up here.
Yeah. There's also that, like, I feel like I know my story, but does anyone else actually are they gonna find value from it?
And I think that there's always, I mean, as somebody who has been narrating her entire professional and not an insignificant amount of her personal life for the past 5+ years on a blog and on Twitter, it's been amazing to me always, and it still amazes me always, that what I have to say and what I write and that personal experience resonates. Like, it still resonates. And I'm always I'm always still a little astounded by that. Not because I lack confidence, although there is that as well, but it's also because, you know, it's like what you said, like, why or how does anybody care? Right? In that, and Kate Bowles she said a wonderful thing to me yesterday, which, and of course, whenever Kate, like, sits you down and looks you in the eye, you're always like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I had that moment, but she said, and again, it's that question of we tend to focus on, and I've been working through this concept for myself, and I'm still trying to figure out how to write through this, of looking at what we ourselves think is our greatest weaknesses, and this is going to sound super cliche, but it is one of our greatest strengths.
Yep.
And Kate says to me, and she's like, I really appreciate, she talked about when she was at Mary Washington 2 days ago with the talk, one of her big points is in ethical online learning, and what it means to be ethical is to notice things, and to notice that you're noticing things, and to really comment on the noticing. And so I notice you, I notice what it is you do, and she is superb at doing that. And so what she says to me, I'm not very good at telling stories.
Did she say that?
No,
Oh.
no, my husband tells me that. He's like, you're not very good at telling stories. So yeah, exactly. Like, get on with it, lady. Yeah. She says, she's like, I appreciate you, is that one of the things that you've always done on Twitter and through your blog and everything is that you always talk about the hard stuff. Afraid to talk about the hard stuff, and you talk about the hard stuff in really accessible and empathetic ways. And I was sitting there laughing because I'm like, oh, really? Because I just thought I was a hot mess. Like, I just thought I was showing the whole world how much of a hot mess I was. But again, she sort of takes that thing that I think that I'm very self-conscious about, and she turned it around for me and said, basically, no, that's your strength. That's what you bring to the narrative, is being able to talk about. I mean, she said it much better, but it's like, you're able to talk about being a hot mess in constructive ways. And I was like, huh.
Superpower.
Yeah, it's a weird ass superpower, and not one I maybe would have asked for, but isn't that the truth for any of them? So again, it's you know, I don't always know what I'm talking about. I don't think I've known what I'm talking about, but that is actually an ask my parents, and the friends that I've had for a long time never stopped me before. So why should I let it start now?
there's an honesty though, and
So
authenticity into that, right? And then, I mean, it's a great to model for learners that we can be vulnerable and put those things out there, because that is actually how we learn, is by saying, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I know there is a community out there that will help find those answers. And I have found that too with the open ed community. I mean, when I came into it, I worked in it for many years, but the last 3 years when I started working on the open textbook project in British Columbia and I came to it, I really felt this sense of imposter syndrome, like, what am I doing here? Last year when I put on the, when I did the open ed conference in Vancouver and I was working with David Wiley, I'm like, oh my God, I've followed, his work for years, and now I'm actually working on a project with him. I'm not worthy, right? That's how I felt. But the community is so fabulous and so giving and so approachable that I have learned so much just because of that. And I think part of it is being vulnerable and being able to put yourself out there and say, hey, I am a kind of a hot mess sometimes.
So my favorite part of this is that Lee and I do these sessions fairly frequently, and it's always the hot mess session.
Yes.
I think Lorna.
We have a question from Lorna.
Yeah, Lorna, go.
Yeah, what I was thinking was, it's more a sort of observation than a question, talking about, do any of us feel like we know what we're doing? And particularly the way Laura was talking about telling stories. And I wonder if to some extent, sometimes we're not the most reliable narrators of our own stories. And I think there's aspects in there about that cover imposter syndrome and how we don't always recognize our own value and our own worth in that space. And I think it's something I think that might be worth thinking about when we talk about telling stories is, are we reliable narrators of our own stories? And if we're not, how can we be more aware of that?
We have an autoethnographer who's studying autoethnography.
Perfect.
Sorry, I have trouble hearing those, so complete to what.
How do we know that we're the best narrator of our own stories?
How reliable are we?
Because I think there is always a tendency that we are unreliable narrators.
Yeah, and it's actually I double insider. So I am the insider as a founder and as a best consumer. And so I'm telling the story from that perspective. Not confidence that my story, I am.
Rebecca, we need you closer.
The speaker.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I guess the key is, and it's funny because I had the exact same reaction when I work with doctors. It's sort of like when I'm working with my care team, I'm the expert in my body. They are not. They may be the expert in the disease I have, but they're not the experts in my body. It's the same thing with autoethnography and sort of with that. We are all the experts in our story. The narrative that we tell it's I guess true in the sense that it is a true representation of what we believe the narrative to be. And I think that's the best we can do.
So how do you think that fits with something like imposter syndrome in academia?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that and again, I sort of said this at the beginning too, where we can, or at least myself, I can be an unreliable, I'll admit to being an unreliable narrative to myself, because there is this narrative that can go. And that's why I said, like, a conference like this helps keep me sane, because it reminds me of how I decide to frame that narrative dictates how I interact with them. You know what I mean? So I feel you in a little bit, that to be reminded that I am an own expert, but as I said, to keep me sane, to remind me, no, I'm not crazy. I just have to have the people around me, like, with that narrative going, no, that's good. Like, that's what you should be doing. That's what you want to be doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I can't wait to hear Laura's story.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to be interesting because it's the first time I've ever shared it publicly. Right after I stopped practicing medicine, I went through my entire history and I captured what I felt were like the 10 most important parts of my medical persona, because I wanted to remember and I was trying to make sense of it all. And I've shown it to, like, I think one person privately. I have never shared this story publicly. So I'm a little nervous. I am nervous. Even though it's not a real presentation, I'm literally going to sit there and I'm going to read what I wrote 5 years ago. So I don't have to worry about the presenting part of being nervous. I am nervous about what's going to happen in 10 minutes, and I hope I don't cry.
And that's the, that is the hardest part, but the reality is the understanding that when you're telling your story that way, you can read the narrative. You don't have to present it the same way you present when you're teaching or whatever, because when you're writing your narrative, you write your story, you really think about, you choose every word you say. And so when you get to the presentation time, it's actually important that you almost read it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other interesting part of this is I have not looked at this for, in fact, I kind of even forgot it was there. But then something happened the last couple of weeks where someone else was sharing their narrative as a survivor of it wasn't cancer, but it was a huge surgery, a huge life-changing surgery, and he had written his narrative, and it suddenly occurred to me that I had a really interesting counter narrative to the patient narrative, and it kind of steamrolled, and it's like, I'm going to share the story at this conference. So
Maha,
we'll
Maha has a question.
Yes, I have a question that has been going on in my mind for a while. And then finally, somebody actually mentioned the same thing yesterday in one of the yesterday's. I think the session with that George was in with his students, which is about why don't conferences invite students to attend? I mean, everything that you've been talking about, it would be inspirational, it would be motivating to students if they feel that they are part of it. They can see their professors and teachers and how they also struggle, how they learn, how they deal with learning or their doubts, but also to see how passionate the teachers are about what they are trying to do for education, for them, for the students themselves. So, and of course the obvious, which is hearing from them, hearing their opinion and what's being presented and so on.
The irony of it is this is the first academic conference I've attended where I wasn't a student. So I've been doing this for a while as a student.
I actually have I give my students the option to get self-directed learning credit to attend virtually connecting sessions. So if they were to listen to this and write a little summary or whatever, then they could get credit for it. So that's how I bring my students into the conferences. It also gives them an opportunity to know which conferences they might be interested in themselves.
Well, and I think that a larger question, I mean, a place like Open Ed would be a perfect place because, as Chuck was saying, it is open and it is welcoming, and we are kinds of educators who embrace that kind of vulnerability. But when you say watch us struggle, watch us be passionate, I just think about my own academic conferences, like going to the MLA, the Modern Language Association. It's a completely opposite experience, right? It's all posturing. There's almost no vulnerability, and even the students who are there to interview, and everybody is in lockstep, sort of academic mode. So when you say but faculty should love for students to see them vulnerable, and I'm like, well, that's fine. And we're okay with that. But I know so many of my colleagues who would be like, nope, there is never, I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but that is one of the reasons why I think on one hand, why there aren't more students is because faculty, I'm going to talk about safe spaces, faculty do actually want a safe space, right? And in a lot of conferences are those safe spaces that we're away from the eyes of our students, but in a lot of ways also away from the eyes of our administrators, right? Conferences are those very rare spaces for academics where we're all going to get together in a relatively safe space to talk about these things that we might not have the chance to talk about in our classrooms or in our meeting rooms because we know who is listening, right? And the other side of that, so there's a lot of complexity in that in terms of how academics treat conferences as actually safe, for better or for worse. Then the flip side of that is also the question of resources, right? I would love to take students to conferences. We have no money for that.
We don't even have money for
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, so there's the flip side. And yes, we can get into virtually connecting. There are ways, and that sort of, but again, it's sort of a side space in a lot of ways than getting their voices heard. And again, this is a huge issue. And I don't mean to just sort of dismiss it as saying resources, but it's not an insignificant concern where we want them here. I don't know how to get them here, right? I don't know how, my students are terrified about missing classes. They're worried about projects. They're worried about their part-time jobs, right? I can't take a day off work, right, to go to a conference. So it's not just often the cost of coming to the conference. And this is something as an adjunct I had to worry about. It wasn't just the cost of the conference, it was the opportunity cost of the conference too. Not only do I have to pay for the conference, but what else am I losing by going to the conference and spending this time for my cost benefit analysis? And I think for a lot of students, the cost benefit analysis is not, doesn't work in their favor in a lot of cases.
Folks, that has to be the last word because it's time. I wish we had another hour with y'all. I also want to thank our accidental audience out here who's been listening in to us because there's a session starting here in 5 minutes.
And we want to give them a chance to get set up.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. Thanks, everybody, for being here. You're welcome to stay and chat a little bit longer if you'd like.